It's practically a miracle that this episode was not ruined for me, considering that I was a little late in the game and catching up with The Walking Dead, because on the night that this episode premiered, I was actually really busy with work, so I had to wait until Monday morning to be able to watch the episode, hence why this review is actually being posted a little late than usual, but I was actually rather busy. But I consider it a bit of a miracle that I was able to not get spoiled by people on Facebook. Well, I actually stayed away from Twitter, but Facebook and other sorts of mediums, because this was one hell of a mid-season premiere. At least it was by the end, because I've heard, some of the cast and crew members saying, "Oh my God, you have no idea what's coming for the latter half of season 5." And so far from what we can tell, we didn't. Now let's just hope that they can keep that promise, because it's one thing to say, "Oh, that's gonna happen in like the first couple of episodes," but what about the rest? Let's hope it holds up. And in the mid-season premiere entitled "What Happened and What's Going On," in between what is and what should never be, Led Zeppelin reference, The Walking Dead showrunners decide to hit us with a 1-2 punch. The first punch was in the mid-season finale with the death of Beth. The death of Beth. It's always funny. And then the second punch is with the demise of one of the more liked characters of the show, Tyrese. I was about to say Gibson. Tyrese, played by Chad Coleman, sadly departs the show in this episode, which is the mid-season premiere for season 5. But if a character has to go that was not only liked by an awful lot of people, but had one of the most interesting arcs in the show, you gotta give him a very ceremonial death. And I feel like they handled that extremely well. Because in the beginning, we're showing all these really random images of the forest with some Instagram flickers. That's what I like to call them, because it looks like filters from Instagram keep popping in here and there during that opening scene. And we just see some scenes that in context almost don't really make that much sense. And then we see shots of Lizzie and Mika, who perished in season 4, talking to the camera, and then we see a shot of a frame with a house in the middle of it with blood dripping on it. And I'm like, what the hell is all this? But as soon as you start watching the episode, you realize that, we're seeing these shots we're gonna see these shots throughout the episode, and it's almost like what Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright kind of do with some of their movies, especially in The World's End, where if you actually pay attention to some of the things in the background during the opening of The World's End, that movie, they actually tell you what's going to happen in the movie in those first few minutes. You just never realized it. They did a similar technique here in this episode, where we see some images that practically tell the story of the episode within that cold open. And it is only by watching the episode that you realize, that's what we're going to be seeing. Now, what exactly is that going to mean? It keeps you in anticipation, trying to figure out what is that shot with the house and the frame and the blood dropping on it mean. After that, we are led to what I perceive to be my only slight complaint with the episode. And I mean only. Like, I thought about it, and this is probably the only thing I did not like about this episode, and that was that within the first 15-20 minutes of the episode, we have some moments of dialogue that weren't particularly boring. They really weren't, but they kind of slowed the pacing of the episode after all this really strange but very unique imagery that we were shown at the beginning of the episode that, again, kind of told the story of the episode without us knowing. But then we get to a piece in the episode where we have two conversations going on. The first one is between Rick and Glenn, talking about whether or not it was the right call to shoot Dawn in the hospital. And then the other conversation is Tyrese consoling Noah after the group decided to go ahead and check out the city. I can't remember what it was called. I honestly cannot even remember the state that this was in, but they decided to check out the town that Noah wanted to go to with Beth. And they get there, and he is shocked and completely distraught by the fact that the town, even though it's still there, it has been completely taken over, and everybody's either dead or undead. And of course, this gets to Noah, and Tyrese tries to calm him down by sharing his experiences with him, which is something that Tyrese is actually practically good at, and we know that by now. And it is this moment that I felt like the pacing slowed down after being introduced with the visual style that this episode was going to undertake, which was, in my opinion, really well directed. And the entire time during the opening credits, I was wondering, who directed this? Who directed this? And it's actually Greg Nicotero, who's one of the showrunners. And it was also written by Scott Gimple. So props to those two guys for delivering what what I perceive to be one of the better mid-season premieres in the show so far. But when it came to this slower portion of the episode, I thought it was everything that had to do with Noah that shined the most for me, because this character was just recently introduced in the season, so to have a bit of an emotional punch in this episode by having him not only go to the town that he lived in, but to the house he was raised in with his twin brothers and his mother, and seeing their corpses there, whether they be dead or undead, as we've come to realize, it was kind of heavy. And I'm actually surprised that I saw a couple of comments while I was looking for these photos for this review saying that they're hoping that Noah bites the dust next. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm liking this guy. I'm hoping he becomes useful, because, you know, after you get past the emotional turmoil, you need to have that character do something. As a writer for the show, you need to make that character uh, really connect with the audience and make the audience go, okay, I understand why you're keeping this guy around. Something that I'm hoping they do with Father Gabriel. Let's hope they do the same with Noah. There's no need to worry right now, because I'm really liking the development that they took with that character in this episode, because even with just this scene here where he's watching what I believe was his aunt, I think I heard him say aunt something, it was some really emotional and powerful stuff. But sadly, it is in this house where Tyrese gets bitten by one of Noah's twin brothers. And even though Noah didn't manage to muster up the courage to be able to put his brother down, which I think speaks volumes, the rest of the episode deals with Tyrese succumbing to the bite, and at the same time dealing with his inner demons about whether or not it was the right call to kill that guy with the hat. I can't remember. I keep forgetting his name, but he was the guy from Terminus, as well as whether or not it was right to let Carol kill not only Karen back at the prison, but also Lizzie and Mika, which led to what is probably my favorite moment out of this entire episode, and that is the reunion of sorts between all these cast members that had to die in the show in the at least the past couple of seasons. From not only Beth in the last episode, but also Mika, Lizzie, Bob is over here in the bed. But the big surprise was the return of the governor. And at first I'm kind of like, what the hell's the governor doing here? But it's the governor's appearance that reminds you, oh yeah, at one point, Tyrese was almost willing to do any kind of bidding that the governor desired, as long as he, quote-unquote, paid the bill. And this entire scene was just the perfect way to have a character go out, especially completing his arc. And again, it's a nice way to kind of reunite all the actors, but there was also this particular moment that the show actually scared me. It's been a while since The Walking Dead has been scary, in my personal opinion. But it was the shot where the governor is approaching him, and then it cuts to it being a walker, that I was like, that got me, to jump a little, and it was actually pretty awesome. And it is also within this scene that, like I said, he completes his arc, he battles his demons, and spiritually, he wins. I mean, sure, his body does manage to give out, but it is here where, based on the tender nature of both Beth and Bob and the girls in that car when they're driving home, it is here where he finally finds inner peace after wrestling with the turmoil of losing Karen and then losing the girls and now losing Beth. It is here where, it's almost like his job on Earth has been completed and he can now rest. It was almost like all those people, the good people, not necessarily the governor, but those people that he teamed up with from the beginning, from his first introduction into the show until now, have come down from, regardless of what you believe, they've come to take him to a better place. The governor tried to come in there to try, sure, it could come off as a little bit heavy-handed, but I think it was filmed rather well, because I was already enjoying the direction that Nicotero was taking with this episode, and I think it was one of the most ceremonial deaths that I've seen for a character in quite some time, not only for The Walking Dead, but for any show. And this also led to what I consider to be just a slight little twist. At the beginning of the episode, when we were seeing all those different images, one shot was of Father Gabriel reciting some kind of prayer, and I was actually believing that was Beth's funeral. But I was kind of surprised to learn that was actually Tyrese's funeral. And it is here where we do see some shots of Sasha and the other members of the group that weren't exactly in this episode to begin with, and it'll be interesting to see what their emotion is after witnessing the death of Tyrese, especially Sasha, because sure, we see that shot where she's kind of like in disbelief, like, did I just lose my brother? She's not exactly crying or sad or broken down, but she's just like, what just happened? And I think that rage and that sadness is gonna come soon enough, and I'm hoping they handle it well and not make her just like Tyrese, where she's kind of, for lack of a better word, useless. But I'm interested to see what kind of character dynamics the show's gonna take now that we've dealt with literally back to back death scenes, not just for the show, but also for the characters involved. Now, all of that was plenty enough to whet our appetite, but the writers and the producers of the show decided to include what I perceive to be a nice little Easter egg, a dessert kind of Easter egg within the episode in two particular parts. One are those bottom torsos, those legs that Michonne finds in the gates of that town. And this just sends a message to her that, hey, we just cannot just keep moving. We need to really settle and fortify ourselves. But it is later when they come across this truck and hit it that all the other remaining torsos, the upper halves of those bodies, come out. And they have actually turned. Who exactly did this? Some people are already speculating Negan, possibly, maybe Ezekiel. But it's definitely something to really speculate and talk about. This was simply a really well-directed, well-written, and well-performed episode that hit an awful lot of notes that were easy to comprehend, while at the same time feeling for the characters involved, especially dealing with a death of a character that was liked by an awful lot of people. And unlike Beth, this one really did hit me. And if they were gonna pull it off, which honestly I didn't think that they were going to. There was a part of me that, okay, once they chop off the arm, maybe they might be able to save them. But an awful lot of time has already gone by, and I'm glad to see that the show didn't betray its own logic, because we're already having trouble comprehending how these zombies work when it comes to their anatomy. So it's good to see that the show's not going to be like, oh no, yeah, he survived, even though he went like half an hour, 45 minutes with the arm completely attached before the Rick and Michonne came in to chop it off. Alright, that wouldn't have made any sense. So as in disbelief as I was, just like with Sasha, of Tyrese actually dying at the end of that scene where they pull over, and I'm like, oh, it actually happened. You know, everybody, all those spirits of past characters told him to let go, and he really did let go. I was glad that they didn't betray the logic of the virus, for now at least. And more importantly, they made him go out in a very ceremonial fashion that I was completely satisfied with, and it hit all the right emotional beats. So for that, I give the mid-season premiere of The Walking Dead a low 9 out of 10. This is actually so far my favorite episode of the 5th season so far, and definitely one of my favorite episodes of the show. The only reason why it's not a mid-9 at the very most is because of that slight pacing issue at the beginning. But other than that, I think that the latter half of the 5th season is off to a really good start, even though it's a bit of a bittersweet start, considering we say goodbye to one of our more liked characters. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the mid-season premiere for The Walking Dead, if you have seen it, and what do you think is going to be brought up in the latter half of Season 5. Do you think we're going to have a new villain to go up against, considering that we saw those bodies being cut in half? And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.